Speaking of seasons, we're talking about time today. And so, as I was praying about this series, God at Home, I was like, God, where do you want me to where do you want me to hit? Like, what are the kind of the big sections of our time at home that or our rhythms at home that I need to address as we look at what it means to be a Christian at home, as what it means to interact at home, what it means to raise our kids in our homes. What are the big things? And so one of them that I really felt we needed to talk about was time. And so this morning, I just want us to, the whole thing is just going to be kind of overarched by this principle that time is treasure. That time is valuable, that time is important, that time has a significance in our lives that we sometimes lose perspective of. Danae hates when I bring this up, but I have an app on my phone that from the day that Zimri was born tells us how many weeks we have left with him until he's 18. She hates that thing. For me, it puts perspective on things. For her, it's like, I don't want to know the update. Just don't tell me. So we have 936 weeks with Zimri until he's 18. Yes. I realize that. I realize that. Thank you very much. Pro parenting tip right there. That may seem like a long time, but the reality is that we already only have 916 of them left. And so I know it doesn't stop. Thank you, Jeanette. But I also know that that's a big shift. And so we are already 20 weeks into this period of time that we have with our son. There's value in that time. The reason why we look at our kids and we go, I can't believe they're growing up so fast, is because we've recognized that there is value in the time of them growing up. The reason that we go on vacation and we go, I can't believe it's already over and I need a vacation from my vacation because I tried to pack it so full, right? Is because there's value on our time. Time is valuable. Mark Cuban, when he sold his company for his first $1 billion, bought 2 lifetime passes for American Airlines for $250,000 because he knew time was a more important resource than money. So this guy sells this company that he's built and he gets his first $1 billion. Okay, anyone in here thinking in billions? I don't think so. Okay. Maybe one day, Lord. but we're not even thinking in billions. But when he gets his first $1 billion, the first thing he goes is, I need something that's going to save me time. I need an ability to get my time back, to not have to book normally, to not have to do all that. I want more time. In fact, I was watching an interview with him and he said, now I've actually sold my lifetime passes because my time is now so valuable that all I want to do is fly private. And so however you feel about that is your business. But he is spending, millions of dollars a year on private flights because his time is what he values most. And if you actually look at a lot of these successful businessmen that have done these interviews and those kind of things, a lot of them, if you pick up on some of the themes, a lot of them go back to, my time is the most valuable thing I have. And it's amazing that we can have the nicest house, we can have the nicest cars, we can have all the things in the world, but time is the thing we're always trying to get more of. That when money is no object, that time is the biggest worry. And yet what's amazing about that is we all are given relatively the same amount of time. We all live the same seconds, the same minutes, the same hours together. And so God talks a fair bit about time in the Bible. But what I noticed as I was reading about time is that God actually doesn't put a lot of restraints on our time. It's one of those areas that the Bible talks a fair bit about, but it's not a restraining amount of verses. It's not talking about how we need to do this or we need to do that, but it gives us the general consensus is some wise principles that we need to have surrounding our time. He doesn't tell us how much or how little to work. He doesn't tell you exactly to tithe your time, as some people would say. He does, however, give us some themes, like I said, about what we can do with our time. The only restrictions God places on our time is that we would take one day out of the week and dedicate it to resting and being in his presence. And so I don't know what Sabbath looks like for you. I don't know how that works for you, but I would encourage you. This is not a Sabbath sermon, but I just want to say it as an aside. If you haven't examined your week in a while and discovered which day or which time period, which 24-hour period is your rest time to spend with your kids, to spend with your family, and to rejuvenate your relationship with God, and you're doing practices that actually do that, can I encourage you to go home and think about that a little bit? It's in the Bible for a reason. But that's not my sermon today, so let's move on. So there's three things that I really kind of gathered as I was looking at the scriptures around time within the Bible this week. Number one, today is more important than tomorrow or yesterday. As you read the Bible and as you read passages about time and where God is referring to time, or Jesus is referring to time, or a prophet is referring to time, it's more and more apparent to me that each of those God-inspired scriptures are meant to push us towards valuing today for what it is. Not just aiming for tomorrow, not just always looking to the future, but what does today hold? Proverbs 27:1 says, "Don't brag about tomorrow, since you don't know what the day will bring." Let's be honest, we don't know what tomorrow holds. I think we learned that lesson collectively about 2.5 years ago. Right? It was, oh, this thing is kind of creeping up. Oh, wait, there's a lot of things happening out there. Okay, we got to stay isolated for a couple days. Oh, it's a couple weeks. Oh, it's a couple months. Oh, and there went 2 years. We learned real quickly that at the drop of a hat, tomorrow can look very different than today. We're not getting into the sides of it or anything like that. Life looked different for every single person when we got hit with the pandemic. Life can look very different tomorrow than it does today. I've said this many times, but one of my favorite preachers, Matt Chandler, he will often say that no matter how you run your life, that no matter how emotionally healthy you are, no matter how spiritually healthy you are, no matter how physically healthy you are, that in a moment's notice, with a simple phone call, your life can be changed forever. None of us are immune from getting that phone call of, this person has passed, this person is going through this is going on in your life. No one is immune from that. We don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. All we can focus on, all we know that we have is today. In fact, all we know we have is right now. And so right now needs to be a focus for us. Who are you right now? Where is your marriage right now? How are your kids right now? What do we need to do right now? And I know that can be hard. Because there has to be a moment, Pastor Nathan, I'm sure you're saying, where I get my rest. Where I don't have to just give my all to my kids when they're not listening, when I don't have to give my all to my adult kids when they're walking away from the faith, when I don't have to give my all to my spouse because they're just not receiving what I'm wanting to give them. And yes, I would agree with that. In fact, I think that this way of looking at time actually reinforces that. That if right now you're not in a healthy place to be able to have that conversation, that right now is a time to go to God and ask him for the strength. That if right now you're not thinking, oh, I can shape this behavior or do this thing or fix this issue, that right now is the time to go to God and say, God, I need your help. That I think sometimes, church, that we lack in prayer because we lack in praying for the right now. We lack in praying for the things that are affecting us right now, today, in that moment. We want to pray for the things that might happen tomorrow. We want to pray, Lord, would my finances be better tomorrow? We want to pray, Lord, would you help bring my kids to you tomorrow? Lord, would you do this tomorrow? Would you do this in the future? It hasn't worked out yet. But what about today? What about today? What do we have to pray about today? Matthew 6:34 says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I know there's a lot of preachers that will stand up on this stage or another stage and say, you need to be praying for your, and we're going to contradict this in a way anyways at the end of this service, because we're going to sing the blessing over generations and generations and generations. And that's wonderful. We want to sing, we want to pray, we want to sow into the generations that are to come. But if your faith is not built to pray for generations, you need to build it by praying for right now. You need to see God work in your life now. You need to see God do things in your life now, and he's faithful to do that. Tomorrow is the enemy's biggest lie. James 4:13-17 says, look here, you who say, today or tomorrow we are going to a certain town and will stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a while, then it's gone. What you ought to say is, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you are boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil. Remember, it is sin to know what you ought to do and then not to do it. So here's where I want us to find ourselves in that tension of, well, how do I pray tomorrow for my kids? How do I pray over the future of my family? How do I pray over the future of my marriage and my spouse? How do I look to tomorrow in a healthy way without neglecting today? And I would say this. I would say that the biblical principle is to not just focus on tomorrow, but to let today be the influence that changes tomorrow. In other words, if you want kids that serve Jesus and you've got young kids in this place, tomorrow is not the time to start teaching them the Bible. Today is the time to start teaching them the Bible. You may not have started yesterday. You may not have started doing what you should be doing in your heart a few days ago. You may not have started when they were 5. You may not have started when they were 3. You may not have started when they were 1. You may not have started when they were 0. But you can start today. You can shape who they'll be in Jesus today. If your marriage is on the rocks and you're going, God, I just need a breakthrough. Sometimes we're praying for a breakthrough in our marriage because we're weak from always doing things today over and over again. Yet God is saying to you, you don't have tomorrow guaranteed. So what can you do today? Pray for me for strength. Pray to me for the ability to endure. But do what you can today. The enemy loves it when we focus on future things rather than present things. Like I said, tomorrow is the enemy's biggest lie. When tomorrow is an option, you can share the gospel with your coworker tomorrow. When tomorrow is an option, you can spend more time with your kids tomorrow. When tomorrow is an option, you and your spouse can stay mad until tomorrow. It's often said in songs that we should do things like live like we're dying, like tomorrow may never come. I think that's one of the most biblically solid secular things out there. That we need to live like tomorrow could be our last. We need to live like today could be our last. We need to live like our time matters. Church, your time matters. Your life matters. If you're in this room right now and you're wondering whether your life matters, can I tell you right now, your life matters, and it matters today. We are so focused on having our life matter tomorrow that we forget to make our lives matter today. That we can can share the gospel with our coworker today, that we can share the gospel with our neighbor today, that we can share our gospel with those that we see at the grocery store today, that we can encourage our kids today, that we can mend the fences with our spouses today, that tomorrow is not guaranteed, that we can spend our time today discipling our kids, loving our neighbors, sending encouraging notes, because tomorrow is a lie. Can I just say that our families cannot wait for tomorrow? There is an enemy who is so focused on today. There is an enemy who is so focused on what your kids are going through right now. There is an agenda, and I'm not talking politically. There's an agenda spiritually for your kids' lives, for your kids' beliefs, for your adult kids' lives, for your adult kids' beliefs, for your grandkids' lives and your grandkids' beliefs. There's an agenda for that, a spiritual agenda for them. Our families can't wait for tomorrow. And church, our kids do not get a family pass into heaven because of our faith. I love that you can get the family pass to a fair or to a theme park, and it's always cheaper, and you get 4 of you in for a good rate. But your kids will not enter heaven because of your faith. I'm not going to get into age of accountability and all those kind of things. But when they stand before Jesus, your faith will not be the determining factor of whether they get in or not. That used to sober us sometimes. There's no family pass in heaven. What I don't want to do this morning, though, is I don't want you to think that I'm like the Instagram influencer that's putting all these pressures on your time. And if you're not spending time making your kids these perfectly organic lunchbox meals and using the cookie cutters to make the carrots look like stars and this and that and doing these perfectly little structured bento boxes that all these influencer moms are doing, or if you're not, doing the perfect reclaimed furniture business on the side, and if you're not, there's all these strategies to create this heaven on earth, heavenly home that is so powerful and so amazing. Everything is good behind closed doors, and oh my, church, people are people. People fight, people mock, people say things they shouldn't say, people get into relational turmoil with one another. There is no perfect relationship, no matter what it looks like online. There is no perfect mother, no matter what she does online. There is no perfect father or a husband, no matter what it seems like he's doing online. There is no perfect family. Anytime we look for perfection on this earth, we will be left wanting. I'm not trying to put pressures on your time like those influencers would. What I'm trying to do is get you to realize that our time today is valuable, and the most we can do is to go through it prayerfully and go, what can I do today? What can I do today? Principle number 2, time is like an object to God. 2 Peter 3 verse 8 says, but you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years is like a day. Psalm 31, 14-15 says, but I am trusting you, O Lord, saying, you are my God. My future is in your hands. Acts 1, 6-7 says, so when the apostles were with Jesus, they kept asking him, Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom? He replied, the Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they are not for you to know. So this is what I want us to understand. This is where we really struggle sometimes, because in our lives, everything has a beginning and an end, right? We are born, and then we die. We plant a seed, it grows, especially in Canada, where we don't have plants that can really last very long. Right? We plant our gardens, seed grows, we get a nice few vegetables or fruits off of it, and then the winter comes and it dies. We have a pet. It's a wonderful addition to our family, and then it passes on. We have all of these things that have a beginning and an end in our lives. Our lives are structured with beginnings and ends. We start work, and then we aim to retire. We start school, and then we aim to graduate. So everything in our existence has a beginning and an end. So when we talk about eternity, and we talk about a God who has always been and always will be, that stands outside of time and matter, that created time in the same way that he created matter, that's in the same way that he created all the things that we have in this world, we need to understand that time is not happening to God, but God stands outside time and has created time. And so only he knows the times when he has selected for things to happen. That's why when it says that a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years like a day, that any Marvel fans in here? Anyone watch the Marvel movies? Okay, so you've got Iron Man, you got Tony Stark, right? And so Robert Downey Jr. And whenever he's working on something, right, he's got this really impressive holograph in front of him. And so he takes it, and it's like, the size of this mic, and then he grabs it in the air and pulls it apart, and it zooms right in, and then he can take the smallest little part of the hologram, and he throws it off to the side all carefree, like it's just like this normal piece of technology, and then he throws in a few other things, like he's got this like perfect toss into the hologram, and then he spins it around and goes, yeah, that's good. Well, I want us to understand that when this verse says that a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord and 1,000 years like a day, it's kind of a picture of how God can see time. He can zoom in as much as he wants and manipulate and do whatever he wants to do, and then he can zoom it out and do whatever he wants to do and look at it and go, yeah, that's good, and spin it around. You ever feel like your time is spinning? That's probably God going, no, I'm just kidding. But there's all this theology around how we should spend our time and what our time looks like and what time is to God. And I've seen the illustrations of your life is like this section of a rope, and then they stretch the rope across the entire stage. And when I've seen it, it's been at like mega churches, so the stage is much longer and the rope is much longer than what we could illustrate here. But I just don't think that that's fully accurate, because eternity is not on a timeline. Eternity is outside. Time is inside eternity. There's a portion that God has created for us to exist and for us to do, for us to be, and for all these things. But time in and of itself is not eternity. Eternity is different. And so we have a God who created time, who set our days before we were even born, who knew every second you were going to live before you were even born, who knew the choices you were going to make, who knew everything that you were going to do, and whether you decided to serve him or not, was still willing to create you. Getting into some theological waters here, so hopefully you'll give me grace. We serve a God who's not affected by time. Time doesn't happen to God. He's not forgotten about you. He hasn't forgotten about your kids. He hasn't forgotten about your marriage. He hasn't forgotten about what you're going through. He's not too busy over in this side of the world to take care of this side of the world. Time doesn't happen to God. We serve a God who stands outside of time, who can do whatever he wants in that time, and has set times apart for our good and for our future. So I don't know what you're going through, church. And I don't know what you're praying through. I don't know what answers you're hoping for. But you serve a God who can look at time, zoom it in as much as he wants, zoom it out as much as he wants, and work however he wants because he created it. You understand that? If God can heal a body, he can do with time what he does with bodies. Time is just another creation of God's. Our God is so big, so mighty, so amazing that the very thing that limits us, that scares us, that is the most valuable thing to us, right? We've got billionaires saying, how do I get more time? How do I maximize the time I have? That he stands outside of that resource and he goes, oh, I want to change it here. Oh, I want to do this. He works however he wants. Our God is that big. He wants us to use our time wisely, but he's also designed our time to be beautiful. Ecclesiastes 3:11-13 says, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. It's okay. Church, can I just be very honest, and I hope you're not offended by this? If it becomes a pattern, I would be more concerned. But it's okay that occasionally we have an emptier Sunday, maybe like today is. That people are out enjoying the fruits of their labor. Maybe this is the only time they have to be out on a nice weekend. I will never be a pastor that is offended because you need to take a rest. I had a Bible college professor that one time said, the most spiritual thing you can do sometimes is sleep. Sometimes we just need to rest. Now, if you miss a month of church, I'm still probably going to be like, hey, y'all good? But we need to stop. We need to stop putting so many demands on our people's time. We need to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We need to enjoy the gifts from God. This Muskoka area is a gift from God. If you have not dipped your feet in the lake yet, what are you even doing in Muskoka? Enjoy the gifts given from God. I'm not trying to convict anybody. It's okay. But enjoy the gifts given from God. God brought you to this place. Danae and I, all the time, we walk. We live in Gravenhurst and we live close to Gull Lake Park, and so we walk just a few blocks down to Gull Lake Park, and we just kind of walk through Gull Lake Park and maybe park ourselves on the bench for a little bit, or go down to the beach or whatever. And it's just a reminder every single time, because, church, I got to be honest, your board was really smart hiring in the fall. As I was driving up to come to interviews and things like that, right? I'm surrounded by the leaves changing color and the beautiful rocks and the perfect weather and how can you not fall in love with this place? But I'll be honest, as I've lived here for about a year and a half now, I can drive those same roads that used to wow me and just be like, okay, I'm on my way to work. Right? I can really easily sometimes lose that perspective of what a gift it is to live here. And then we have friends come up and visit us from down south and think, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful up here. It's like, yeah, wow, God, you're amazing. Look at what your creation is. Look at what you've done. Look at the shimmering water. Look at the beauty of the snow on the pine trees. And God, you're amazing. There's beauty to be found in life all around us. There's beauty to be found in playing a board game with your kids. That's a fruit of your labor. Sometimes we want the fruits of our labors to be like big expensive vacations and stuff like that. But hey, God's given you enough to have a board game, and he's blessed you with a life he's entrusted you with. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. Enjoy the fruits that God has blessed you with. Enjoy your home. Don't get caught up in doing renos so much that you forget that God gifted you with that home. Don't go past and through life and forget, wait, God gave me this. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's okay. Last thing I want to leave us with this morning is this. Time has an eternal impact. So we talked about how eternity stands outside of time and how it's two different things, but make no mistake, time was created to have an eternal impact. Your time now affects your eternity. Psalm 90 verse 12 says, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. That we would understand that life is short, that there is a very short amount of time that we are on this earth. And some of you who have lived a lot more life than I have lived yet will probably tell me that it goes by in the blink of an eye. I've heard it said many times. Oh, you'll realize one day. It goes by in the blink of an eye. It goes by fast. It happens so fast. It seems so slow in the moment, but yet so fast when you look back on it. Time is valuable. It is when we realize how short our time is here on this earth that we can live in wisdom. What is wisdom? It's living according to godly principles. This is how amazing our God is. He created time for us, so that it would reinforce the principles he expected us to live while we were on this earth. That if we'll just look at this creation of time that he's given us, that it's actually meant to reinforce the wisdom that we're supposed to have that he's laid out in his word. Your time is not just there so that there's a measuring stick God can use and how did you use it. Your time is there to reinforce and go, oh, wait a second. I need to treat my marriage with respect because I only get so much time with this person. I need to squeeze every bit of juice I can out of the orange that is my time with my kids because I only get so much of it. I need to make sure that I impact my workplace because I'm only here for a certain amount of years. I need to make sure that I reach out to my family and I make sure that there's a connection there because I only get so much time. That the brevity of life gives us wisdom to live out godly principles. Because if tomorrow was guaranteed, I would guarantee you that our churches would be a heck of a lot emptier. You could always go tomorrow. You could always learn tomorrow. If you knew the day that you died, let your sinful heart realize. You knew the exact day that you died. You would allow yourself into as much sin as you would possibly be willing to do because you knew you could come back to him in the last week or month or day of your life. Don't think you would do it? Watch next time you think you can get away scot-free with something. If every opportunity of every day was given to you to compromise the Bible, which it is right now, but there was no time limit on it, somewhere along the line you're going to start giving in. Once you start giving in, it snowballs. We've talked about sin before, how it snowballs. I guarantee you that all of us would struggle that way. Time, the brevity of life, allows us to grow in wisdom. 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-3 says, now concerning how and when all of this will happen, dear brothers and sisters, we don't really need to write you. For you know quite well that the day of the Lord's return will come unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. When people are saying everything is peaceful and secure, then disaster will fall on them as suddenly as a pregnant woman's labor pains begin, and there will be no escape. I was thinking about this week, and it's a really scary thought, so I hope you'll forgive me for giving you this. But as I was holding my son Zimri, I was thinking about what I was going to be preaching this morning. I was thinking about this verse. You know, we talk in the North American church a lot about the rapture and when Jesus returns and takes the saints. And I don't want to get into age of accountability and all those kind of things because there's so many depths to get into there. But what if I'm counting on the family pass into heaven? Danae and I are walking down the street with Zimri as a little boy or as a young man. And there we go. And he's left. Man, that's scary. That'll change how you raise your kids. If we let that really affect us, man, Jesus could come at any moment. And the time is now for them to know Jesus. The time is now for them to love him. The time is now for them to experience his grace and his mercy. The time is now for me to download as much biblical knowledge as I have. The time is now for God to show Zimri his presence. And our prayers need to reflect that Holy Spirit, would you work on the heart of my kid as he's not even able to make his own decisions really yet. But God, would you work on the heart of my kid? It'll change the way you parent. Galatians 6, 9 and 10. So let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially those in the family of faith. Especially those in the family of faith. I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up this morning. This verse hit me this week. And it wasn't just because we were talking about time. But I think I've been pretty clear that my hope for this church is that we would reach the community of Bracebridge. That my hope is that we would reach out to those that are far from God and we would impact this community for Jesus in a way that it hasn't seen in a long time. My prayer is that people would come to him in droves. My prayer is that lives would be turned around. My prayer is that out of a small town like Bracebridge, a smaller community like Bracebridge, that a church that is thriving and loving Jesus and giving praise to his name could be seen, that God can do anything anywhere, that it's not just big cities where a church can have an impact, but in small towns where a church can do an amazing thing for the community, that we would see the spiritual quotient of Bracebridge raised because of the worship and the testimonies out of Wellington Street Pentecostal Church. That would be my heart. But we have to be careful because verses like this exist. That we're not so outwardly focused that we neglect doing good for one another. That we neglect treating the gathering of the saints, those that love Jesus, those that are called according to his purpose, that we don't neglect that. That we don't give up on that. That we don't treat that with the proper respect, that we are meant to do good, but especially for those who are in this community with us. You're meant to do good. You're meant to share Jesus. You're meant to do so many things. But church, do not let your love for the community be your excuse for mistreating the church that he has given you. We need to love one another. We need to get across the table from one another. We need to be generous with one another. We need to show one another how it is to parent well. We need to show one another what it is to be married well. We need to show one another what it is to be on our own well. Singleness is a gift, church. There's a gift in it. We need to be a church that gives good things to each other. Our time has an eternal impact. Time is your biggest piece of treasure. And I want to leave you with this thought this morning. Why don't we stand? That'll make me finish faster because I'll feel bad for you. We're going to sing the blessing, and we're going to sing over the generations to come. And the Bible says that a curse lasts to the third or fourth generations, but a blessing lasts for 1,000. So right now, you have an opportunity to lift up the name of Jesus and hope that it has an impact for generations. Right now, you have an opportunity to impact the time that will be lived by others. But right now is also the time to let your heart be worked on. Because God wants to use you in the generations to come in your family, but He can only use you if you'll surrender right now. If you'll surrender in this day, in this moment. And here's what I don't want us to do. I don't want us to prepare our families for the days ahead. I don't want us to prepare our families for time. I want us to prepare our families for eternity. Because that's where we're headed. That's our hope. That's our destination. And so you can set your family up for the time that is about to come, but it will not be worth what it is if you set them up for what eternity is holding for them. Prepare your families for eternity, not for the times that are about to come. So this morning, as we sing a blessing over our families, over the generations to come, let's sing that their eternities would be impacted. And let's stop worrying about how their days will be lived, but that their eternity would be secure. That's what we're singing for this morning. Let's sing together.